You think you're falling asleep, but you're actually falling apart. Every breath you take before sleep is a surrender not to rest, but to a reality stitched together by lies your brain tells itself to stay sane. Tonight, we'll peel back the layers slowly, painfully until even your dreams don't trust you anymore. 1. The familiar stranger. Your brain is lying to you right now. You woke up today and thought you recognized yourself in the mirror. That was your first mistake. What you see is not a reflection, it's a projection. Your brain constructs a version of you from memory fragments, pattern recognition, and the blind arrogance that you're consistent from one moment to the next. You are not. You never were. Let's begin with a proven psychological phenomenon, the Capgras delusion. A person suffering from this disorder looks at a loved one, a spouse, a parent, even their own child, and suddenly believes they've been replaced by an identical imposter. The face is right, the voice is correct, but something deeper feels wrong. The emotional connection, once automatic, is severed. The person looks familiar, but the feeling is foreign. What's terrifying is not the condition itself, but what it reveals about how all of us experience identity and familiarity. You don't actually know your loved ones, you recognize them through an emotional resonance processed subconsciously in the fusiform gyrus and amygdala. If those circuits misfire, even for a moment, the illusion collapses. Now apply that same logic inward. What happens when your sense of self is built on the same faulty wiring? According to research from neuroscientist Anel Seth, your consciousness isn't a mirror of reality, it's a hallucination your brain constructs based on prediction, not perception. It takes noisy, ambiguous sensory data from the world, guesses what's out there, and presents you a filtered version that keeps you alive, not informed. What you call reality is just your brain betting on the most useful lie. Take the rubber hand illusion. A subject sees a fake hand being stroked, while their own real hand out of view is stroked the same way. Within minutes, their brain accepts the rubber hand as part of their body. They flinch when it's threatened. They disassociate from their real hand. Their identity shifts to include a piece of plastic, simply because the brain was tricked into making new predictions. You're more puppet than pilot. And the strings, they're neural shortcuts designed to prevent you from realizing how little control you truly have. Let's go deeper. Ever heard of depersonalization disorder? It's a condition where the self begins to unravel. You feel like you're watching your life as a movie. Your thoughts echo like someone else's voice. You look at your hands and they don't feel like yours. You're not even sure if you're real. But here's the secret. Every human being has experienced this briefly. Some point during trauma, stress, fatigue, or even after too much caffeine. Your brain can drop the act with no warning, and when it does, it reveals something chilling. The self is a role, not a reality. A role played by a decaying biological machine, narrating a story it can't prove is true. Why does this matter? Because it means you can't trust your memories, your preferences, your dreams. They're all echoes bouncing around inside a black box pretending to be a person. Think you know who you are. Recall the false memory experiments by Elizabeth Loftus. People were convinced through simple suggestion that they'd been lost in a mall as children. They invented details, faces, emotions, entire scenes. None of it ever happened. So if memory is malleable and identity is memory, then who are you when the data can't be verified? Let's break this further. Studies in split-brain patients, those whose corpus callosum was severed, show that the Two hemispheres of the brain can operate independently, each with its own preferences, reactions, and speech. In one experiment, the left hemisphere was shown a picture of a chicken claw and asked to point to a related image. The right hemisphere was shown a snowy scene. The left hand pointed to a snow shovel, the right hand to a chicken. When asked why they chose the shovel, the subject replied, "To clean the chicken coop." That's not truth. That's a cover story fabricated instantly by the brain to maintain the illusion of coherence. It didn't know the real answer, so it invented one. And so do you, every day. You've never had a consistent self. You've had a self-image, constantly rewritten. Continuity is a hallucination your neurons maintain through pattern completion, prediction, and censorship. Every time you think I know myself, you're simply ignoring the parts that don't fit the story, even the default mode. Network a group of brain regions active when you're not focused on the outside. World is responsible for crafting that inner voice, the you narrating your life, but it's just noise, just neurons firing in a specific rhythm, simulating coherence so you don't go insane from the void. But what happens when it breaks down? What happens when, in a moment of silence before sleep, the narration stops and nothing replaces it? What happens when you wake up, look in the mirror, and your brain no longer recognizes the face staring back? 2. The tyranny of time. Why your past and future don't exist. Do you think you're moving through time? From a childhood you vaguely remember to a future you anxiously anticipate. But that's a fairy tale your neurons whisper to keep you functional. What if I told you that time as you know it doesn't actually pass? Let's start simple. The present moment, the now feels real. You're reading these words, thinking, breathing, sensing. But the moment you try to grasp it, it's gone. It collapses into memory, becomes the past, and the next instant rushes in, just as ephemeral. What you call life is a river of snapshots, stitched together by a brain desperate to feel continuity where there is none. In physics, this illusion gets shattered entirely. According to Einstein's theory of relativity, time isn't a universal tick-tock metronome. It's a warped, flexible dimension that bends with gravity and motion. To someone moving faster than you, your entire life, past, present, future exists, all at once, laid out like a map. The future you fear is already there. The past you regret never truly left. They coexist in space-time. You just can't see them, so why do you feel time? Why does the future feel distant and the past unreachable? Blame your biology. The entorhinal cortex and hippocampus, regions responsible for memory and spatial navigation. Simulate the passage of time by anchoring events to locations and sequences. It's a survival mechanism organisms that could remember. Cause and effect lived longer. But it doesn't mean the cause and effect are real, just useful. Evolution doesn't care about truth, only utility. Let's look at the chronostasis effector, bizarre glitch in your experience of time. When you quickly shift your gaze from one object to another, your brain fills in the gap by stretching the moment after the second hand of a clock will seem to freeze when you first look at it. That pause, that's a lie. Your brain overrode reality to avoid temporal fragmentation. Your life is full of these edits. In fact, experiments in neuroscience show that your brain routinely reorders the timing of your perceptions. It delays conscious awareness by milliseconds to synchronize input, sometimes even backdating events. You don't experience the world in real time. You experience an edited playback. You are always watching your own life on delay, but it gets worse. The block universe theory in physics suggests that past, present, and future are equally real. You are not moving through time. You are embedded in a static, four-dimensional structure. Your birth and death are fixed coordinates. Your brain just scans across this structure in a way that creates the illusion of flow. You're not traveling. You're flickering frame by frame like a corrupted film reel projected inside your skull. This means your future isn't coming. It's already there, and you're trapped in the illusion that you can reach it, change it, or escape it. Consider Libet's experiments on free will. Subjects were asked to flex their wrists at a moment of their choosing and note the time they felt the urge to act. Libet found that their brain had already initiated the action hundreds of milliseconds before they consciously decided to move. The conclusion: your brain decides before you do, then fabricates the feeling of choice afterward. Your will is a shadow cast by actions, already set in motion. Now add this to the time paradox. You are stuck in a deterministic sequence of events, already woven into the fabric of space-time. Every choice you make is merely your consciousness catching up to what has already occurred. You are not steering your life. You are narrating IT post, hoc like a man reading his own obituary aloud. But surely memory proves the past happened. Right, wrong. Memory is not a recording. It's reconstruction. Every time you remember something, you change it. The hippocampus doesn't pull out files, it rewrites them. Memories degrade, mutate, merge. Worse, they're emotionally biased. You remember what confirms your identity, your narrative, your myth. Your childhood isn't real. It's a propaganda. Film your brain remakes every night. And what about the future? Studies in neuropsychology show that imagining the future activates the same neural networks as remembering the past. In other words, your future is just a memory you haven't edited yet, a dream created by the same machinery that lies about. Yesterday, you never leave the present. You never touch the past. You never enter the future. You are nailed to the cross of now, hallucinating a journey that never begins, never ends, never moves. And when you die, you won't know, because, from your perspective, the moment before death is eternal. Consciousness doesn't move past the final second, it dies inside it. Which means, subjectively, you might already be dead, trapped in the illusion of continuity. As your neurons fade, you'll never escape the frame, but you will keep watching it over and over. So, tell me, if time isn't moving, and your choices are already made, and your memories are rewritten lies, who exactly do you think is going to wake up tomorrow? 3. The phantom body. You are not inside your flesh. You think your body belongs to you. You think you are inside it, safe, contained, anchored. But your body is not your home. It is a haunted house. You are just another ghost pretending. To own it, let's start with a crack in your perception. It's called the out-of-body experience. For centuries, mystics and monks described leaving their physical form during moments of trauma, meditation, or sleep. But in the modern lab, it can be replicated with nothing but sensory manipulation. Scientists at the Karolinska Institute in Sweden induced OBEs using virtual reality and tactile feedback, causing participants to feel as if they had left their bodies and were floating in the room. Their physiology responded as if it were true: increased heart rate, panic, disorientation. But their physical body remained motionless. This isn't magic. It's neuroscience. The brain doesn't know the body, it maps it. That map is fragile, constantly updated through feedback loops between your visual system. your somatosensory cortex, your vestibular system. Break those loops, and you dislodge the self from the flesh. Now meet the body, integrity, identity disorder. BID. People with BIID feel like a limb and arm, a leg isn't theirs. They beg doctors to amputate healthy limbs because they experience them as alien, foreign. Mr. E showed disrupted activity in the right superior parietal lobe, responsible for constructing body ownership. The result? Their own body becomes an intruder. What does this reveal? That your experience of owning a body is not hardwired, it's constructed, and it can fail catastrophically. But let's go deeper. Consider phantom limb syndrome, where amputees continue to feel pain or sensation in a limb that no longer exists. The nerves are gone, the tissue is absent, and yet the pain is real. The brain's map of the body still includes the missing limb, and it screams when the expected input vanishes. Some even feel the limb curled into impossible, painful positions, twisted fingers that no longer exist, frozen toes that were incinerated in war. You are not feeling your body, you are feeling your model of it, and the model never matched the flesh. Let's twist it further. Consider the rubber body experimenter, cruel expansion of the rubber hand illusion. Participants lie on a table, and a mannequin's body is positioned over theirs. When researchers stroke the mannequin's body in sync with the subject's unseen real body, the subject begins to feel as if the mannequin is their body. Threaten the mannequin with a knife, and the subject panics. Their brain adopts the plastic corpse as self. You are not in your body, you are in a hallucination of a body. But the hallucination is so compelling, so recursive, so reinforced by sight and touch, that you cling to it like a sinking ship. Let's now crack open the homunculus. Fallacy, the idea that there's a you inside your brain, watching through your eyes, steering the body. It's a comforting lie, but there is no inner self peeking through your skull. Open the brain and you will find no observer, no cockpit, no pilot, just networks firing, just chemical fog drifting between neurons, just recursive loops predicting the next frame of reality. And here comes the final betrayal. Mirror touch, synesthesia. People with this rare condition feel physical sensations when they see someone else touched. Watch a hand get pricked, and their own hand stings. Their cortex doesn't differentiate between me and you. The boundary between bodies breaks, and, in extreme cases, like the neuroscientist Joel Salinas, who lives with this condition, daily the pain of others becomes unbearable. Imagine seeing a man get hit by a car and feeling every shattered rib, as if it were your own. What does this say about your body? That it was never a boundary. It was never you. It was just a convenient frame one, your brain projected into the world. Because the alternative was too vast, too terrifying, too formless. Because the truth is this: you were never in your body. You were never here at all. You were a point of reference with no coordinates, a frame of reference with no position, a hallucinated center around which reality orbits. Your body is not your container. It is your cage. And what happens to a mind when the cage begins to rust? When the boundaries dissolve? When you look down and see a stranger's hands moving without you? If you're not inside your body, where the hell are you? Or the illusion of thought. You don't think your thoughts right now. You're thinking, or at least you think you are. The words moving through your mind feel like yours, chosen, authored, original. But they aren't. They never were. Your thoughts are not you. They're echoes of systems older than language, older than logic, older than you. Let's start with the most blasphemous idea science has given us. You do not control your mind. In 2014, neuroscientists at the University of California recorded neurons in the prefrontal cortex firing before subjects became consciously aware of their decisions. Even before people thought they were thinking, the brain had already begun the process. What felt like a free decision was merely the endpoint of a chain reaction, the last domino falling after. Countless others had already toppled. This is not a metaphor. This is measurable, your inner monologue. It's not the cause. It's the aftershock. Now, consider this. Thoughts appear. You don't summon them. Try sitting in silence, doing nothing but watching your own mind. You'll notice something horrifying. You don't create your thoughts. They arrive uninvited. Some are beautiful, some are monstrous, some are senseless. But they come unannounced, like strangers knocking on a door you don't remember building, and yet, you still call them yours. You claim authorship of a script you didn't write. Why? Because the alternative is unlivable, that your mind is an open channel, and you are nothing more than the static between stations. In Buddhist psychology, this is recognized as unnata, no self. There is no thinker behind the thoughts, no commander, just sensations, impulses, reactions, ideas rising and falling like bubbles in a boiling pot. You are not the pot. You are the steam pretending to be solid. Let's go further. Think of your language, the words you use to think with English, Urdu. Whatever you speak were not invented by you. They were programmed into you by your culture, your family, your media. They shape what you can even imagine. The Sapir-Whorf hypothesis proposes that language limits and structures thought itself. So even your imagination is colonized. What you think is possible is bound by the syntax of strangers. Consider how semantic priming works. Flash the word doctor, and the next word nurse is recognized faster than butter. Your brain is not neutral. It is constantly anticipating based on past patterns. So your thoughts are not free there, chained to associations. You are a marionette, and language is the string. Now turn to your beliefs, the ideas you cherish, the values you think are yours. Behavioral economist Daniel Kahneman showed how irrational and reactive our thinking is. His work on System 1 and System 2, thinking, reveals that most of what we call thinking is just instinct dressed up in rational clothing. System 1 reacts fast, emotional, automatic. System 2, the so-called rational mind, comes in after to clean up, justify, make excuses. You don't think to find truth. You think to defend yourself. Even your introspection is PR, want proof. Think of the last time you did something cruel or stupid. Your mind doesn't say, I was wrong. It invents reasons. I was tired. They provoked me. It wasn't that bad. You rewrite the past to preserve the illusion of a stable self. But there is no stable self, just the illusion of coherence. Even the default mode network, that internal narrator we call me, is nothing more than the brain's attempt to model the mind to itself, its recursive hallucination. A mirror looking at another mirror, forever reflecting a self that isn't there, and sometimes that mirror cracks in thought. Insertion: a symptom of schizophrenia patients report that thoughts are being placed in their minds by outside forces. They don't feel ownership. They don't feel control. But here's the twist. The thoughts themselves are no different from yours. They sound the same. They use the same language. They just arrive stripped of the lie of authorship. So maybe the schizophrenic doesn't suffer from a delusion. Maybe they suffer from a truth, seen too clearly, Because if your thoughts arise without your choosing, in a language you didn't invent, shaped by memories you didn't verify, inside a culture you didn't choose, as echoes of neurons firing before you were aware, then what exactly do you mean when you say, I think? Do you? Do you really? 5. Memory is a lie. You're dreaming the past you believe. Your memories are the foundation of who you are. That your identity is a thread running through your life, sewn into the tapestry of childhood, adolescence, adulthood. But memory is not a thread, it's a hallucination. A lie the brain tells itself to survive continuity. You aren't remembering your past, you're dreaming it. Let's begin with what neuroscience confirms. Memory is not a recording device. It's a reconstruction process. When you recall an event, your brain doesn't replay a video, it rebuilds the scene from fragments, guesses, emotions, and context. And every time you remember something, you slightly change it. This is called reconsolidation. And it means every act of remembering is also an act of rewriting. You are not a product of your past. You are a victim of your most recent edit. Psychologist Elizabeth Loftus proved this in a series of devastating experiments. In one, she implanted false memories in participants, convincing them they had been lost in a mall as children. Subjects invented details, emotions, entire scenes that never occurred. They weren't lying. Their minds had rewritten reality, complete, with sensory and emotional components. Your past is not protected. It's rewritten every time you look at it. And here's what's worse, even traumatic. Impossible to forget memories are vulnerable. In fact, PTSD shows us that the more emotionally charged a memory is, the more it becomes fragmented, distorted, looped. The event becomes frozen, looping endlessly, infecting present experience. You don't remember it, you relive it, over and over. Except each replay is degraded, more surreal, more disfigured by time and pain. You are haunted by ghosts you created. Now look deeper. The Mandela effector, mass misremembering of public facts, demonstrates how even collective memory is warped. Thousands of people remember Nelson Mandela dying in prison, or the Monopoly man having a monocle, or Febreze being spelled with 2 E's. These aren't glitches in the matrix. They're the natural byproduct of a biological system that prioritizes coherence over truth. The memory system doesn't store truth. It stores narrative, and when narrative breaks, the mind fills in the gaps, automatically, without permission. Consider childhood amnesia, that eerie blackout of your early life before age 3 or 4. You lived those years. You cried, laughed, clung to your mother's heartbeat, and yet nothing. Why? Because the hippocampus, the brain's memory architect, wasn't mature enough to build lasting representations. Your earliest memories of childhood are reconstructions based on photographs, stories, assumptions. They feel real, but they are fictions draped in nostalgia. Your first years on Earth were lived without you. Even short-term memory is vulnerable. Look up, change, blindness. In experiments, people fail to notice when one person is swapped for another during conversation. Entire facial features change. The mind doesn't register it, because memory is not interested in detail. It's interested in plausibility. You don't remember what happened. You remember what should have happened, based on what you expect a story to look like. Even autobiographical memory is filtered through shame, desire, ego. You highlight your victories. You delete your betrayals. You smooth out the jagged edges of confusion and contradiction. In this way, your identity becomes a novel written by an unreliable narrator, a narcissist pretending to be honest. And what about dreams? You think they're fiction? Studies in lucid dreaming show that the dream state draws heavily from episodic memory, but in corrupted, surreal forms. The dream self is stitched together from fragments of the waking self. The dream world is a museum of misfiled memory, which raises the terrifying question: if your dreams are built from distorted memories, and your memories are built from distorted dreams of the past, then what part of you is real? Try this. Recall your most cherished memory: a birthday, a funeral, a kiss. Now ask yourself, where were your hands? What color were the walls? What time of day was it? What did the air smell like? You can't know, because you were never there. Your body was, your senses fired, but you, the narrative self, was built afterward. Looking back, reconstructing, inventing meaning. You're a ghost looking into a foggy mirror, convinced it's a window. You say, this is who I am. But who you are is a memory of a memory, a dream inside a skull that can't even tell the truth to itself. So I ask you, if every time you remember something you change it, then who was the version of you that lived it the first time? 6. The mirror has no reflection. You have never seen yourself look into the mirror. What do you see? A face, eyes, skin stretched over bone. A familiar arrangement of features you've learned to call me. But that's not you. That's an optical hallucination, a reversed phantom stitched from photons, muscle memory, and expectation. You have never seen your own face, not once, not directly. You only know of yourself through reflections, photographs, and how other people respond to your presence. Your image is second-hand, and your self-image is worse. Let's start with the obvious. The mirror lies. The image you see in the mirror is reversed, left or right. It is not how the world sees you. It is how you see a stranger. Yet you've grown to prefer this version. Studies show that people consistently prefer mirrored images of themselves over true photographs. Why? Because your brain is used to the flipped version. The real one looks off, wrong, alien. You love the lie more than the truth. But even photographs deceive. Camera lenses distort. Lighting shifts, contours, angles create illusions. And yet you assign identity to these fragments, profile pictures, selfies. IDs as if they captured your essence. As if a still image could capture a self. As if you were ever still. Even worse is the mirror self-recognition test, the experiment, used to determine self-awareness in animals. A mark is placed on an animal's body where it can only be seen in a mirror. If the animal touches the mark on itself, it's taken as evidence of self. Humans pass this test around 18 months of age. But what does it actually prove? That we recognize visual continuity. Not that we understand who we are, because your self-recognition isn't stable. Stare into a mirror long enough, and something fractures. Try this. Sit in dim light and gaze at your reflection for 10 uninterrupted minutes. Within minutes, most subjects report strange distortions. Faces morph, features vanish. Some see monstrous shapes, others see their face replaced by someone else's. This is known as the strange face illusion, documented by psychologist Giovanni Caputo. It arises from neural adaptation when the brain stops responding to unchanging visual input and begins to generate hallucinations to fill the void. In other words, your brain gets bored of your face, so it replaces you. Let that sink in. You are so unfamiliar to your own nervous system that it hallucinates over your identity. Now consider prosopagnosia, or face blindness. People with this condition can't recognize faces, not even their own. They rely on voice, mannerisms, context. Their reflection is meaningless, and yet they still have identities, because identity is not visual, it's narrative, constructed, RETOLD, which means your image is a performance. You look into a mirror not to see, but to confirm a role, to validate that you still exist. What about the voice in your head? Surely that's you. But studies using auditory hallucination models show that inner speech activates similar areas as external hearing. Your inner voice isn't a pure self, it's a simulation, a feedback loop. You think you're talking to yourself, but you're just rehearsing the role of you for an invisible audience. You can't name. Even your internal mirror is broken. Now look at how the world sees you. Your reflection in the eyes of others. You think you have an identity, but ask 5 people to describe you, and you'll hear 5 different versions. To some, you're kind. To others, cold. To one, you're forgettable. To another, unforgettable. So who's right? None of them. All of them. Because yourself is not a fixed object. It's a mirror, reflecting mirrors. A house of identity built without a single wall. You are defined by perspectives you can never access, and by impressions you'll never be allowed to correct. The philosopher Lacan called this the mirror stage the moment. A child sees its reflection and begins to believe in a coherent I. But that I is fiction, a shell, a boundary drawn in panic. Because before the mirror, the child existed only as chaos, hunger, sensation, noise. After the mirror, a role, a symbol, a prison, you learned to be you. Not to be real, but to be seen. And you've been performing ever since. So look again. Look into your own eyes, in the mirror tonight. Hold the gaze, feel the unease, because you are not seeing yourself. You are seeing the mask your mind stitched from 1,000 judgments, accidents, and lies. And if the mask ever slips, if the mirror ever forgets what it's supposed to reflect, what's left to recognize you? 7. Language is a cage. Words control what you can perceive, speak, and think you're expressing truth. You believe language helps you communicate reality, but that's a trick, a deep, systemic illusion. You are not using language. Language is using you. Let's dismantle the faith. Words feel like tools sharp, precise instruments you wield to describe your thoughts. But words don't describe your thoughts, they define them. Your mind is fenced by grammar, vocabulary, syntax. You only think thoughts you have words for, and the thoughts you cannot name, they rot. They become ache, confusion, silence. You call it depression, anxiety, numbness, but maybe it's just the agony of having no words for what you're really experiencing. Welcome to the prison of expression. Linguists call this the linguistic relativity hypothesis, or the hypothesis. In its strongest form, it suggests language determines thought. More conservative versions argue that language influences what you can notice, what you can feel, what you can recall. Either way, the implication is clear. Your awareness is colonized. Let's get real. The Himba tribe in Namibia has no word for blue. They cannot distinguish blue from green in visual tests. But they have dozens of words for subtle shades. Of green and can detect differences most Westerners cannot. This isn't because their eyes are different. It's because their language trained their brain to see or not see what mattered. Now flip the mirror. English, your language, doesn't distinguish between types of silence. It has no word for the soft hush between two people who understand each other. No word for the ache of nostalgia before it forms a memory. Other languages do. Saudade in Portuguese, mono no aware in Japanese. And yet these feelings exist in you but remain unnamed, unprocessed. Trapped in fog, can you feel something if you can't speak it? Can you escape pain if you can't name it? Language has no words for most of your inner world. It slices the spectrum of experience into crude categories: happy, sad, angry, scared. But your emotions are not that clean. They bleed into each other. They fold and contradict. But when asked, you force them into boxes because that's all your language allows. You shrink your soul to fit grammar. Even worse, words distort time. In English, time is linear. We look forward, move on, leave the past behind. But in Aymara, a language spoken in South America, the past is in front of you visible, no Nand. The future is behind and seen, unknowable. In Mandarin, time flows vertically. In Hopi, it barely exists at all. These aren't poetic quirks. They shape cognition, memory, anticipation, regret. You don't experience time, you experience verbs, pretending to be time. And then there's the illusion of definition. You think words point to reality, but they don't. They point to categories, built from abstraction. Take chair. Is a rock a chair if you sit on it? Is a beanbag a throne? At what point does chair stop being chair? You don't. No, your brain just guesses. But guesswork is not knowledge. It's survival. Even meaning is fragile. Wittgenstein showed us that language doesn't work because we agree on definitions. It works because we agree on use. When someone says pain, they don't transfer their feeling to you. They trigger your own internal model of pain based on past usage. But their pain is not your pain. And their I love you is not your I love you. Every sentence is a private hallucination, dressed in public symbols. And still you trust it. Still you say, I know what I mean. But meaning is unstable, recursive. The more you explain something, the more it dissolves. Try defining truth without using other abstract terms. You can't. Every word leads to another word, like mirrors facing each other, reflecting forever into confusion. Language has no bottom, and yet you are drowning in it. Even your inner voice speaks in words. You narrate your life to yourself. I'm doing okay. I'm not enough. They don't care. But who is speaking? Who is listening? The voice is not you, it's the software installed by your culture, your parents, your peers. You think in slogans, in mantras, in rules you never wrote. Your mind is not a cathedral, it's a script. And the moment you try to step outside, the words to feel raw, to perceive without numbing terror, rushes in. The void, the formless, the UNTAMED. So you retreat, you say, I'm fine. Because you can't speak what you really are. And if you can't speak it, can you ever know it? 8. The lie of the senses. Your reality is a hallucination. You agree with you, trust your senses. You touch, hear, taste, smell, and see the world, and assume that what you experience is real. But every sense you have is a broken instrument. Playing noise, the brain converts into meaning through distortion. You do not see reality, you see a model of it. A hallucination so stable and agreed upon. You've mistaken it for truth. Let's dismantle the foundation. Start with vision. Your most trusted sense. You don't see with your eyes, you see with your brain. The eyes are just portals, crude cameras with blind spots and pixelated clarity. Your optic nerve has a hole in it. There's a literal gap in your vision, but you don't notice it, do you? Because your brain fills it in. It fabricates part of your world colors, shapes, patterns based on context and memory. Your experience of sight is part reality, part guessing. You are hallucinating. The hallucination is seamless now. Look at the Troxler effect. Fixate your gaze on a central point, and peripheral details begin to fade. Why? Because the brain stops processing. Unchanging stimuli. If the world doesn't move, it disappears. You aren't seeing what's there. You're seeing what changes. The static is erased. Your world only exists in motion. So what about color? It doesn't exist. Not really. Color is not a property of the world, it's a construction inside your brain. Light hits objects, reflects at various wavelengths. Your brain interprets these wavelengths as color, using 3 types of cone cells. But the mapping isn't fixed, it's contextual. The famous dress illusion, blue and black or white and gold, proved this. Half the world saw one set of colors, the other half saw another. Both were certain. Both were wrong. Color is not out there, it's in here, projected onto the void like a film on blank walls. Let's talk about hearing. You think sound is vibrations in the air. It is, but what you experience as sound is the brain's interpretation of those vibrations. You only hear between 20 Hz and 20,000 Hz. That's less than 0.1% of the full electromagnetic spectrum. Most of reality is silent to you. Elephants communicate in frequencies you can't hear. So do whales. So does the planet itself. You live inside a quiet bubble, wrapped in ignorance. Touch. Illusion. Your skin isn't reading the world, it's interpreting pressure, temperature, texture, through delayed neural signals. When you touch something, you aren't feeling it directly. You are experiencing an echo, processed and distorted. The brain delays all sensory input by milliseconds and then synchronizes it into a coherent moment. You are always experiencing the past. You have never touched the present. Smell is older than language. It bypasses the thalamus, going straight to the limbic system, the emotional core. That's why scent triggers memory so powerfully, but it's unreliable. The same smell can evoke disgust or nostalgia, depending on mood, context, conditioning. You think you know a scent, but you're not smelling reality. You're smelling history. Even taste is manipulation. Sweetness, bitterness, salt, umami. These aren't properties of food. They're survival codes. Sugar meant energy. Bitter meant poison. Your tongue is a paranoid gatekeeper, triggering reward or disgust based on ancestral trauma. You don't taste food, you taste chemical interpretations filtered through evolutionary panic. And then there's the 6th sense, proprioception. You think you know where your body is. You move without looking. You walk, dance, gesture. But this too is an illusion. People with proprioceptive deficits lose their sense of body position. They must watch their limbs to move them. The self in space is not hardwired, it's constructed. And when the system breaks, so does identity. Let's deepen the cut. Neuroscientist Anil Seth calls consciousness a controlled hallucination. Your brain doesn't passively receive the world, it actively predicts it. It generates hypotheses about what should be there and updates based on error. You don't experience the world directly, you experience your brain's best guess. Your reality is a hallucination confirmed by sensory feedback. When the feedback matches the guess, you say, that's real. When it doesn't, you say, that's strange. But both are hallucinations. You never wake up. You just hallucinate consistently, until you don't eat, until the senses betray you, until you see a shadow that isn't there, hear a voice in silence, feel a touch in an empty room. And the worst part, these glitches aren't rare, they're constant. Your brain just filters them out. The world you live in is one version among infinite possible interpretations. Your sanity is just consensual illusion. So now, I ask you, if your eyes lie, if your skin lies, if your taste, your ears, your sense of self lie, what part of you has ever been in contact with reality? 9. The myth of the individual. You are a colony pretending to be one. Things you say, I like it means something. Like there is one unified self who acts, chooses, thinks. But the truth is far darker. You are not a singular being. You are a collection, a system, a crowd. You are a colony of minds, organs, microbes, and voices stitched together by a nervous system, desperate to call itself whole. Let's start with biology. There are more non-human cells in your body than human ones. Bacteria, archaea, virusized, 10 to 1. Your gut microbiome, a dense jungle of foreign organisms, controls your digestion, your immune response, even your mood. Studies show that gut bacteria produce neurotransmitters like serotonin, dopamine, and GABA, directly influencing your thoughts and emotions. Change the bacteria, change the mind, so who's in charge? The self for the swarm. Take the case of fecal transplants, a grotesque medical procedure where gut flora from a healthy person is transplanted into a sick person. In multiple studies, personality traits changed, anxiety levels dropped, cravings shifted, even food preferences transformed. A piece of someone else's gut turned into a piece of someone else's mind. Now consider the split-brain patients, individuals whose corpus callosum, the bundle connecting the two hemispheres of the brain, has been severed. These patients behave as if they have two minds, one in each hemisphere. In one experiment, the right hemisphere was shown an image and asked to select an object. The left hemisphere, which didn't see the image, was then asked why the object was chosen. It didn't know, but it made up a reason anyway. Confidently, instantly, your brain doesn't know what's happening. It just invents stories to explain it. Even within a single brain, your personality is not stable. It shifts with hormones, sleep, hunger, memory. You are a different you when you are tired. A different you when someone you love dies. A different you when you hear your favorite song. And yet, despite these shifts, the illusion of continuity remains. But who is the narrator? There is no central eye watching from the control room, no soul in the cockpit, just neural networks feeding information forward and back, making decisions, suppressing other decisions, and sending a story to the surface. The you think you are is the result of internal censorship, a dominant voice silencing the rest. But sometimes the other voices leak through. In dissociative identity disorder, DID, the psyche splits into multiple selves. These aren't made up, they have different memories, skills, preferences. Brain scans show different activity patterns depending on which identity is in control. Some alters even have allergies or vision differences, the others don't. The brain is not one mind, it is a city. And sometimes the city revolts. Even everyday people like you experience contextual personality shifts. You act differently at work than at home, differently with friends, than with parents. You change language, tone, posture, beliefs without noticing. These aren't masks. These are autonomous selves, optimized for survival in their environments. What you call faking it is simply multiplicity in motion. Psychologist Robert Ornstein called the mind a coalition government. Philosopher Daniel Dennett described the self as a center of narrative gravity, a fictional point, around which stories are organized, but which has no actual substance. You are not a person, you are a consensus formed by conflicting parts that agreed, temporarily, not to tear each other apart. Now look at your immune system. It is its own brain, making decisions about what belongs and what doesn't. It can attack your own cells. It can be trained, manipulated, confused. When it turns against you, you don't call it treason, you call it autoimmune disease. But maybe it's just a rebellion. One part of yourself declaring war on another. Even your DNA isn't entirely human. Your genome is riddled with ancient viral code passed down over millions of years. Dead invaders integrated into your essence. You are part virus, part history, part accident, and yet you say, "This is me." But who is me? The part that wants to fast, or the part that craves sugar? The part that forgives, or the part that fantasizes about revenge? The part that dreams of transcendence, or the part that masturbates at 3 a.m.? All of them claim to be you. All of them lie. So now, answer this. If your thoughts are a committee, your body is a zoo. Your brain is a parliament of competing drives. And your identity is a stitched-together myth. Then what is the real you? Is there anything at all behind the eyes? Or just a reflection of reflections echoing into silence? N. Free will is a ritual. You obey what you don't understand. You woke up today and thought you made choices. You believed you decided to get out of bed, to eat what you ate, to say what you said. You believed you had agency, but you didn't. You performed agency. You mimicked freedom. In reality, your will is not free. It's a ritual your nervous system acts out to maintain the illusion of control. Let's start with the experiment that shattered everything in the 1980s. Neuroscientist Benjamin Libet placed electrodes on subject scalps and asked them to flex their wrists whenever they chose, then to report the moment they felt the urge to act. What he discovered was devastating. The readiness potentialist signal in the brain that indicates preparation for movement appeared hundreds of milliseconds before the subject became consciously aware of the decision. Your brain moved before you did, and you only became aware after the decision had already been made. This wasn't just a glitch, it was structural, and it didn't stop there. In 2008, a study led by John Dylan Haynes used fMRI scans to predict a subject's decision up to 7 seconds before they were consciously aware of it. The subjects were told to press either a left or right button whenever they wished. The researchers could see which choice the brain was preparing long before the subject decided. Your freedom is post-rationalization. You think, I chose. But your body chose. Your unconscious chose. And your conscious mind caught up like a desperate PR department, making excuses for a machine it doesn't run. Still think you're free. Try the ironic process theory. Try not to think about a pink elephant. Go on, try. The harder you suppress a thought, the more it rebounds. Because the very act of trying not to think something requires that your brain constantly check for the thought. Willpower becomes recursion, and recursion becomes failure. You are not free. You are an arena where impulses compete, and freedom is the name given to the winning impulse. after it has already won. Even your values are inherited. Your culture, your religion, your preferences, you didn't choose them, they chose you, born into your nervous system, spoon-fed by parents, teachers, advertisements, trauma. You think your will is yours, but it's just the internalized momentum of everything you were too young to question. What you call discipline is merely one set of impulses beating the others into submission. Temporarily, let's talk. Addiction. No one chooses to be addicted. No one decides to override their own long-term interest with short-term craving. And yet, addicts lie. They say, I can quit any time. They say, I'm in control. But the choice is an illusion. They are passengers. They are watching themselves collapse and pretending to drive. Now, ask yourself, when you scroll for hours, when you lash out, when you sabotage yourself, who exactly is doing that? And who's watching? Because if your conscious self is helpless against your own behavior, what does you even mean? Let's go deeper. The default mode network, the region of the brain active during introspection and self-reference, spins narratives about your past, predicts your future, tells you who you are, but it does so automatically. You don't instruct. It just runs, like a simulation, like a background process. What you think of as yourself is just a stream of stories flowing from machinery you don't control, and still, you cling to the fantasy. You have to, because if there's no free will, then what happens to morality, to responsibility, to guilt, to pride? Everything collapses. The courtroom, the religion, the confession booth, the self-help book call become theater. You punish people for decisions they never freely made. You praise yourself for traits you inherited from trauma or genes. It's all ritual. And even if you choose to accept this, that too was determined. So maybe you were meant to read these words. Maybe you were never free to look away. And maybe you're not choosing to ask the next question. Maybe you're just following the script. But if free will is a lie, then who's holding the pen? You've just spent the last 30 minutes realizing you've never been real. Your thoughts, not yours. Your past, a dream. Yourself, a glitch wrapped in rituals. And yet you're still here, still watching, still waiting for something to make. It makes sense, but nothing will, unless you fall deeper. So if you felt anything dread, discomfort, recognition, subscribe. Not because you want to, but because you already did before you even got here. And if you're still pretending you're in control, hit like. At least perform the illusion well, because trust me, this descent hasn't even started yet.